Everyone knows Nintendo, but what does the company's name actually mean, and where does the word come from? Although many have theorized about the origin behind the multi-billion-dollar video game brand, even tying it to gambling circles and the Yakuza, one crucial hint remains overlooked. The Nintendo that we know today was far from being the only company with that name. Nintendo was founded in 1889 by Yamauchi Fusajiro in the south of Japan's old capital, Kyoto. Although only a small workshop producing karuta, Japanese adaptations of Western playing cards, at first, the name Nintendo would accompany the business from the get-go. Nintendo was, and in Japan continues to be written using 3 Chinese characters, or kanji. Nintendo. While there exists no written evidence as to why Yamauchi decided to use these characters, it is possible to make some informed assumptions. Let's start with the third character, Do. Whilst being a common denominator for temple and shrine halls in Japan, Do is also used in non-religious contexts, such as describing assembly halls within the imperial palace from as early as the 8th century. Thus, rather than carrying an inherent spiritual connotation, Do can be understood in a more practical sense. It described a building or large room with a specific purpose. Over time, the character then also starts to appear within the names of commercial establishments. We find plenty of visual evidence for this throughout Japan's Edo period, with especially bookshops and print publishers frequently making use of Do in their names. There are several theories as to why this happened, with the most straightforward one being that the character's meaning was simply understood as a place where a lot of people gather, or where one would entertain guests. What remains important for us, however, is that by the time Nintendo was founded, company names ending with the suffix Do were extremely common throughout Japan and continue to be popular even today. This brings us to the other 2 characters, ninten, which are a bit more complicated. The common theory is that these 2 characters were borrowed from the idiom 𝒦𝗢𝗨𝒧𝒧 makaseru, which is oftentimes translated as leaving one's luck up to heaven. This, then, would make Nintendo a company that leaves its success up to heaven, but there are problems with this interpretation. Some have argued that this name was purposefully chosen by Yamauchi to emphasize the role that luck played in his core business, considering that one of Nintendo's first products were Hanafuda, flower cards, which the company prominently sold to gambling halls within Kyoto. Other theories even go as far as to argue that Ten was taken from Tengu, legendary creatures associated with gambling among other things, and the Nin from Ninkyodo, the moral code of Japan's crime syndicates, the Yakuza. Thus, the name Nintendo would have been a not-so-hidden acknowledgement of Japan's underworld. However, this is most likely not what the term primarily stood for. We know this because there were in fact plenty of other businesses called Nintendo that were using the exact same characters and yet had nothing to do with gambling whatsoever. Within Japanese commerce and industry registries dating to the 19th and early 20th century, we come across Nintendo bookstores, pharmacies, general stores, and even a clinic called Nintendo. If the characters ninten were indeed mainly associated with gambling, naming a hospital like this certainly seems a bit morbid. But why then were these businesses choosing this name? Because it likely evoked Confucian values. The expression ninten finds its origin in ancient China, based on a passage within the 5th century Book of Song. This alone gives us quite a bit of context. Ten, of course, does not refer to the Western, biblical idea of heaven, but to the Confucian notion of an omnipotent heavenly deity that actively intervenes in earthly matters to maintain harmony. This intervention takes shape through the mandate of heaven that a deity grants to righteous individuals. Thus, the Japanese 𝒦𝗢𝗨𝒧𝒧 makaseru does not mean how it might appear at first glance. Neither is it passive, nor is it about luck, about leaving everything to the random roll of a dice. It's quite the opposite. Just like the mandate of heaven was not given to one by birthright, but was something that had to be gained, 𝒦𝗢𝗨𝒧𝒧 makaseru means to do absolutely everything in one's power to achieve something and only then to leave that which cannot be controlled in the hands of heaven. Consequently, a more fitting translation of the idiom would be entrusting one's fate to heaven. And this is exactly how Yamauchi Hiroshi, the third president of Nintendo, remembered his grandmother explaining the name. But why would the founder of Nintendo have cared about some ancient Chinese philosophy? Because the Confucian classics were not only held in high esteem throughout much of Japanese history, with the phrase behind ninten even appearing in some of Japan's most prominent literary works, such as the 𝒂𝒄𝒕𝒖𝒂𝒍𝒍𝒚, but also because Neo-Confucian values were being rekindled right around the time Nintendo came into being, forming a pillar of the nascent state ideology of Meiji Japan. And indeed, we find numerous modern commentaries on Chinese classics and other books mentioning ninten in various contexts that were published in the years leading up to 1889. Whilst it is not impossible that Yamauchi's Nintendo also carried a secondary meaning, the company's name in all likelihood, first and foremost, created a traditional facade that conveyed the image of a hard-working and educated yet humble business that fit right into the highly conservative city of Kyoto. And Nintendo was far from the only company employing this naming strategy. In conclusion, when it comes to companies with a long history such as Nintendo, we must be all the more cautious of survivorship bias. Just because Nintendo managed to endure against its competition and grow into a massive corporation in the long run does not mean it was exceptional from the outset. Neither Nintendo's business model nor the company's name were completely unique at the time of its establishment. Yet, in the end, knowing what Nintendo used to mean certainly makes us more appreciative of what the name has come to represent.